俺の巨人が倒れてこいつがリヴァイか何も見えない荒れたのか足が
Hajime Isayama has managed to wonderfully design one of the best experiences I've ever had. As storytellers and filmmakers, we can learn so much from it. So in Why It's Good, we will be covering 3 elements that make Attack on Titan a masterpiece. Attack on Titan does so many things right, so it's definitely not limited to these 3 elements. These elements have been chosen because they make Attack on Titan rise above all other experiences. The other elements will be discussed in future episodes, so stay tuned. Create better art, we must know what came before. Understanding the why makes us better thinkers.
Art would not exist without copying and stealing.
Good artists copy, but great artists steal. And in order to steal something amazing, we need to understand why it's good. Since I can remember, I've been telling people that most TV shows are boring because they milk out a certain concept. It's always the same proven formula used in later seasons or episodes, and there is never really a sense of change, danger, or meaning. You can watch the same shit for 10 seasons. I'm looking at you, Smallville. I mean, every season opening and finale begins and ends with a great episode only to then fall flat the entire season. I always had that feeling of repetition, and of course, it's clear why. Change is difficult and risky, especially when you're focused on making money. But then luckily shows like Game of Thrones and Attack on Titan came, and they are true exceptions. Every episode felt like a season opening and finale. Every episode mattered to the story. They plan the entire story as far as they possibly can and design the experience carefully. They know what they're trying to tell. Unlike most TV shows that go with the flow, they make the audience really care about the characters in the world by creating characters that the audience can identify with, and therefore they trigger empathy. And of course, they break audiences' expectations, which brings us to our first act.
Attack
on Titan is a masterpiece that has consistently surprised audiences by subverting expectations in a way that is meaningful to the story, adds to the experience, and is properly set up and paid off, making it an integrated part of the show. There is a difference between masterfully subverting expectations and merely subverting expectations in order to surprise the audience. So why would you even care about subverting expectations in the first place? The audience nowadays has learned the language of cinema and story, meaning most of the time the audience knows where the story is heading towards. Most stories, music, art pieces, products are remixes of what came before, which means they create expectations, and if those expectations are met, you create a good experience. However, if you can subvert and exceed expectations, then you can create a unique, new, original experience that feels super exciting because we don't know what's going to happen. By subverting and exceeding expectations in a good way, you can create an unforgettable experience that is worth having and sharing.
Let's sugar, keep it until the dawn, you're the trigger. お前、胸張って生きろよ。
Oh shit! Oh my gosh! Historia! Oh god! I really thought she was gonna stab herself there at that last second. Oh shit!
The effect of properly and consistently subverting expectation is that we, the audience, cannot guess what's going to happen next and are therefore genuinely engaged in the show. The moment that Historia has to choose between making her father proud, doing what is expected of her and accepting her heritage, or doing what she feels is right and starting to live for herself. We simply don't know what she's going to do, because all this time Hajime Isayama has subverted our expectation and shown us that this isn't going to follow the usual rules. At this scene I was filled with anxiety, fear and stress, not just for Eren but also for every other character. And of course, when she chose the difficult route of rejecting her father, breaking the needle with the Titan fluid and then letting Eren go, was exactly what we didn't think would happen because of this entire setup. We thought that he would be saved by Armin, Hanji, Levi and Mikasa and the entire squad, or maybe that she would eat him. Let us not forget that the choice of Historia was also an effect of what Ymir made Historia promise her.
雪山の訓練の時にした約束を胸張って生きろよ。約束だぞ、クリスタ。でも初めてなんです。親に逆らったの。
Setups like these make out of character decision feel like a development of character rather than just a random change of character.
父さん、話を聞いてよ父さん。巨人を一匹残らず殺せばいいんだよ。なんで分かってくれないんだ。
僕ならきっと大丈夫だよ兄さん。どうか祈ってくれ。
ハルマ、君だけだ僕を分かってくれるのは。
私に任せて父さん。先祖の亡霊なんかに私は負けないから。
神よ。命すべて毒が捨てられるものなんてこれしかないんだ。
Even though the show is called White's Good, I do feel like I need to warn you about the malpractice of subverting expectations and its effects. In the two best episodes of Season 3 Part 2, Armin gets burned to death, even his metal gear turns into liquid, and he talks about this being his sacrifice. Then his dead body falls from a height of effectively 35 meters. This enables them to win from the Colossal Titan. However, what is bad is that they nullify what happened here in the next episode by cheating him out of death. He is still alive after all of this. He cheats and breaks logics to enable an absolutely awesome and engaging episode. This hurts the longevity of the show, meaning next time somebody is about to die or dies, it won't feel that stressing because Hajime Isayama can always just cheat logics. It takes away from the trust of the audience. I do have to say that this is the only time in Attack on Titan that something crazy like this happens without a good explanation. So the show is holding its own. I've seen other shows do this far worse. So when you subvert expectations, make sure that there is a setup and please make sure that you don't break logic and cheat certain systems. While it might surprise the audience, it also devalues the long-term experience and it hurts the longevity and gravitas of the entire show. Now, for example, when Historia gets the letter that Ymir has been writing, Historia gets to connect with Ymir, and then this happens. We get some quick shots of Ymir, and then in one of the shots, Ymir is set up for a sacrifice. But what immediately struck me was the fact that this couldn't have happened unless the power of the Titans works in a way that breaks space-time. This is impossible and broke the rules it set unconsciously, which makes this a mistake. So here's where the previous sin of letting Armin survive through everything really hurts Attack on Titan. It made me think that this was a mistake, which of course for the second time it pulled me out of the experience. But then a few moments later, this happened.
妻でも子供でも町の人でもいい。壁の中で人を愛せ。それができなければ繰り返すだけだ。同じ歴史を、同じ過ちを何度も。ミカサやアルミ。
What? Huh? No. What is going on? This motherfucker can see into the future?
Okay, so that's just neat, okay?
And this is why Attack on Titan is a true masterpiece. It manages to break expectations every single time. Now I understand that most people wouldn't have immediately understood the subtle hint of the power of the Titan, that it works across the space-time. But still, without catching the subtle hints through Historia's visions, he still surprised the audience. I can honestly say this was one of the best twists I've ever experienced in my entire life, because I was convinced that this had to be a mistake, and it just wasn't possible. But yes, this is the effect, this is the warning that I give you. If you surprise audiences for just the sake of surprise, and you break certain systems, cheat logics, it's gonna be hard. The trust is gone, and then it's gonna be hard to regain that trust. So to summarize it all, never make it about luck, and never do it without a substantiated logical reasons, because it pulls people out of the engagement. Subverting expectation in a good way means surprising the audience in a way that is meaningful to the story and adds to the experience. Let's just quickly go through what is meaningful. What does that mean in a way that is meaningful to a story? It means that it either changes the perspective of the story, changes the characters, changes the world, it just goes a different route, or it changes literally the way that the audience looks at the entire story. That is what it means. If you're able to do that, that will be meaningful, that will feel like it was there for a reason.
海の向こうには自由がある。ずっとそう信じてた。でも違った。海の向こうにいるのは敵だ。何もかも親父の記憶で見たものと同じなんだ。まあ向こうにいる敵全部殺せば俺たち自由になれるのか。
So until now I have talked about big abstract ideas that aren't that easy to replicate, and because Why It's Good is all about learning from the best in a way that we can practically apply, the following 3 chapters are all about practical methods that you can apply right now. Hajime Isayama uses well-known story tropes to easily anticipate the expectations and then forsakes the story trope in order to surprise the audience with a twist. This feels, of course, again, new, original and exciting to the audience. Now this is pretty easy to do, but Hajime Isayama takes it to the next level by not just subverting our expectation. He does this in a meaningful way that changes the characters and the world and pushes the story forward to an unknown and unexpected direction. An example of a story trope is the hero that never loses, or the hero that never dies, or the 2 badass hidden antagonists that the hero has to fight and win from in order to know their identity. Yeah, exactly. Attack on Titan breaks all the story tropes. It's something that I've been telling people all the time. These story tropes create a mediocre experience, an experience we already had a lot of times, and it's only by being able to spot them in your story that you will be able to break them and make your story feel more original, new and exciting. And at the same time, if you do it properly, you can make them truly meaningful. Now, let's take an example of Attack on Titan. The best example is, of course, Reiner's identity reveal. This was just so different, and it wasn't because Hajime wanted to be flashy and different. Not without a good reason. Again, Hajime Isayama manages to integrate it so deep in his characters and world. Reiner's way of coping with being responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women and children is creating a different personality that doesn't feel or know about it. And you can see how it damaged Reiner. You can see how these experiences, his past experiences that we don't know about, past, of course, the walls that have been broken. You can see, that Reiner isn't bad. That it's it wasn't his choice. He even says this in the reveal, and yet he is responsible for it, and he knows it. At least one of his personalities knows it. And in order to live with that burden in peace, his mind split, but only under the extreme stress of season 2 did he crack. It's really easy to write story tropes. We have read them so many times, watched them, and they naturally come to us. The trick is to actually create something different, first by spotting the story trope that you write. Then ask yourself the following question: is this really interesting, or has this been told before? Then you could see where the story tropes brings you and what the alternative route would be, the interesting alternative route. Of course you choose the alternative route, and now you have to work back to integrate this different route in the story, making it natural for the story, but keeping the story trope built up so your audience expects a story trope, but gets something way more interesting. Of course, the entire twist, the subversion and the surprise. That's how you use story tropes. Alright, the other thing is, consciously or unconsciously, you are creating rules for your world. Monsters, characters, machines, diseases, and more. This makes the audience put everything in boxes and attach rules to them. It almost works like a story trope in that you can exceed and subvert their expectation and surprise them because you can anticipate the expectations. However, this requires a lot of thinking and processing for your story, because if you break a certain box and or rule without setting it up properly, by for example foreshadowing or hinting at it in some way, it can just feel stupid and could be labeled as a cheap surprise trick, especially if you have too much going on. The audience becomes disconnected. Here's how you should do it. If you're going to break a box or a rule, make sure there is a logical explanation that is already integrated within the story. For example, in Attack on Titan, Eren all of a sudden controlled Titans to save everyone from a dire situation while in human form, which would be totally unacceptable and labeled as lazy storytelling, if not for the fact that the Beast Titan controlled the Titans before. And Reinar called Eren the coordinate, which made it acceptable and didn't, get the audience out of the experience. It was so masterfully integrated within the story that it lifted the story to a whole new level. All of a sudden we understood the motivation of Reinar and Bertolt. This is now a meaningful twist in both that it reveals what motivated Reinar, Bertolt, Annie to attack humanity in the first place, and saves Eren and the majority of the scouts from a dire situation without being lazy writing. This is probably the biggest lesson I learned from Attack on Titan, because Hajime Isayama is using it on all levels of story. I call it BAC, non-linear storytelling. It helps to create suspense and sets up everything to subvert expectations. BAC refers to the story or information order. A normal linear story would go like this. A. Hanji explains the new weapon to kill the armored titan. B. Eren fights the armored titan, and C. They use the weapon on the armored titan. He is shocked by the new weapon. Simply by putting scene A after B, we create suspense because we are missing something. At the same time, it raises hunger for the piece of information or exposition. All of a sudden, the exposition scene becomes something that the audience craves for and is interested to see rather than bored, because we understand why we need this piece of information. We understand why this scene is important. Now, Dan Brown talks about this in his masterclass. He speaks about leaving information out in order to create suspense and raise questions.
And we often talk about getting into a chapter a little bit late. Sometimes a great exercise for you will be to write a chapter, then just put a line through the first 2 paragraphs, such that you're starting in the middle of the action. You can take those descriptive paragraphs and pull them in after the action gets started. But what happens is that your reader is instantly vested in that chapter. They may get the description a little later, but by that time it's too late. They're already into it.
Attack on Titan, with all its crazy plot twists and surprises, manages to consistently keep us hooked, not just by subverting our expectations and truly picking an interesting new direction for the story while doing so, it also raises a lot of questions by leaving out a lot of information. Using the BAC non-linear storytelling, we can finally see how Attack on Titan Season 3 Part 2 has gone back into history to clarify its story, which showed us we didn't start with story A, but with story B, and season 4 then will be story C. With all the small pieces of information that gets released to us, we hunger for more and more because of the exposition having gravitas on the story. It also changes us and how we look at both the world of Attack on Titan, but also on our own world. We see how stories are one-sided and how the world is not an evil versus good place. It's objectively a grey area and just depends on the perspective of the person. Of course, this person grows and changes. Protagonists in Attack on Titan feel real because of their clear wants and hidden needs, and of course their flaws. It doesn't always stack and creates difficult choices the characters have to make that will not only forever change them, but also the people surrounding them and the world. And this is what the next Attack on Titan episode will be all about. It will be about the gravitas of exposition, the multiple three-dimensional characters, and the complex world.